willing would you be to live your life according to your values and beliefs? What my work as a psychotherapist has taught me, and my doctoral research findings have shown, is that when we are living our lives according to our values and beliefs, that we're happier and we're more well. Not being able to answer those questions, who are you, what do you value, what do you believe, are the kinds of things that show up in my therapy office. And this is how it happens. People first come into counseling because of their too muchness. Too much binge eating, too much starving, too much anger or resentment, too much lying or cheating or stealing. And a long time ago, I used to try to fix those things, like they were the behaviors that were the problem. But fixing them just made them come back, or they'd be replaced with another too much alcohol or weed or sex or cutting. So that didn't work. And as I grew up and matured a little bit as a therapist, I started to listen to the stories that were living underneath people's too muchness. And what started to happen was that I started to hear these two places that people would land. One is that people don't know who they are, and they can't answer, who are you, what do you value, what do you want? And then the other group of people, and I'm sure it's a spectrum with outliers, of course, is people who know who they are and what they value and what they believe, but they are reluctant or scared to act and speak from that place. And when we don't know who we are or we're reluctant to act and speak from that place, I think it's made worse also by all of these posters and posts that surround us that say, be true to yourself, follow your bliss, listen to your heart. Okay, those things are really hard to do if you don't actually know who you are. And if we don't know who we are, then there's a really good chance we're listening to people tell us what we should do, the culture, our parents. We find ourselves, doing things we should when we don't necessarily feel that way ourselves. My mom affectionately calls that shoulding on ourselves. I had to make a slide for that because it sounds like shoulding on ourselves, yes. And when we're shoulding on ourselves, we don't feel very good. I should have done that, but I didn't. Right? You feel kind of in turmoil. And shoulding on ourselves can make us feel unwell, diseased, uncomfortable, and miserable. And the American musician and producer, Frank Zappa, and I paraphrase, said, if you find yourself with a boring and miserable life because you listen to your mom and your dad, your teacher, your preacher, or the guy on television telling you how to live, then you deserve to be miserable. I mean, I don't really think anybody deserves to be miserable, but I do think that it's familiar to us to be misaligned because we did listen to our parents. We did listen to our teachers, and we towed that line, and we followed those rules, and we did what we were told, and we bought in. Somebody said they were on autopilot. But I think at some point it makes a lot of sense for us to question whose voice we're listening to and catch misalignments in our lives sooner than later. I mean, and when I talk about misalignments, you guys, you're doing it all the time. We're doing it all the time. I mean, if you're going out to a club again with your pals when really all you want to do is lie on the couch and sleep, that's a little misalignment. Or you go out and order the salad when you really want the juicy burger with the grease running off your elbows and the melted blue cheese. It's a misalignment. It's little, but it's living in you. You didn't do what you really felt like doing. And little misalignments can lead very obviously to big misalignments. Like if you're in an engineering program and you want to be a chef, you're going to wake up 15 years from now and not like your career. Or if you're loving a woman when you really, really want to love a man, that's going to end you up feeling isolated and possibly depressed later on. Or if you're dating somebody your mom loves, I think you know where that one's going to end. And the one that always shows up, I think daily in my office is, knowing that you should do a little bit of exercise because it's going to make you feel better and it's going to be good for your mental health and your mood. And you don't. You just watch another movie or game a little more. Those big misalignments like careers and relationships and health, those things are painful and frightening when they get to be that big. And they take a long time to untangle, and they take a a lot, and they're a lot harder to put back together. The good news is that 20 years as a therapist, I've seen over and over again this pattern of people realigning their lives, even just a little bit, and feeling better. And that, me seeing that so often in my practice, was so important to me that late in my life, already tired, I went back to school and did my doctorate. And I went in search of people. This is what I did. I just wanted to find out what people do when they're aligned. How do we do? First up, this is what you get. So I went in search of these folks. And all I did was I found people who were living their lives really closely aligned with their values and beliefs. And I asked them how they did it. How did they feel? What did they know? What helped them do that? What hindered them from doing that? I wanted to know what it meant to be aligned. And I used to call that alignment authenticity. Now I got to tell you, 5 years, talking, reading, learning about authenticity, I got sick of the term. Really sick of the term. I mean, it's applied to everything from pocket watches to Thai cuisine to running shoes to Montreal bagels. Yeah. And it got diluted, and it didn't have any meaning anymore for me. And I was really, there was about a week in there where I was super frustrated with this term. And what was most important about this, I can't even approach. The most important thing about this thing about authenticity is that the people in my research study who I talked to, they did not identify themselves as being authentic. I'm an authentic person. That's not how they said it. They said, what I found is that they lived from a source. They talked about a source and a center. And the great Chinese sage Lao Tzu, 2,500 years ago, managed to summarize my entire doctoral dissertation in one sentence. And he said, at the center of your being, you have the answer. You know who you are, and you know what you want. That's exactly what people told me when I went and I asked them, what does this mean? They said, you got it. It's right here. Center, they called it. Soul, they called it. Inner knowing. Intuition. Almost everybody in the study called it their gut feeling. You know what a gut feeling is? Go with your gut, yes. And one woman called it her home. And just about that time when that finding was coming up, a couple of serendipitous things happened to me. One, my friend, who's a numbers guy, a quantitative researcher, continues to tease me about my authenticity research. And he sent me a photograph, this is all he does, sends me a photograph in my email of authentic Texan barbecue sauce. So that happened, and that email came in, and my news feed beeped on my brand new word of the day. And my word of the day that day was the Spanish word querencia. Querencia. Querencia has become, over time, has been interpreted poetically by people like Barry Lopez, who's an American writer, and others, to mean a place from which our strength is drawn, the place where we know exactly who we are, and where we speak from our deepest beliefs. It's like, oh, goodbye authenticity, hello querencia. Yes, I love this word. This word encapsulates so much about my research that matters to me. And if querencia is our source, then a querencetic life is how we live from that source. And all of these years of research, what it boils down to, for me in this work, is that a querencetic life, first of all, these are the 4 things we have to do. We have to find our source. You got to do the work of knowing what you value, believe, who you are, what matters. The second thing is, we have to be able to hear this. We have to slow down and breathe and create space for a long quiet. If you were to sit here for a minute and just listen to what your gut would say, what would you hear? You're feeling a little uncomfortable right now and want to grab your phone and eat something, I don't know, but that kind of way we distract ourselves, human beings don't want to hear, we don't want to know. But my work has shown me that we have to listen so we can hear it and we can trust it. Third thing is trusting our source, our querencia. It knows. And the fourth thing is acting and speaking from this place. And when I say speaking, I don't mean like being nice and saying thanks for dinner and I love your sweater, because that's easy. I'm talking about things like, you know when you were having a bath yesterday, I read your texts. That one, you know. Or I'm not coming home for the holidays. Ouch. Or last Saturday when you said that thing in front of all those people, that hurt, and I would like not to do that anymore. Like, are you squirming? Those are the ones, acting and speaking is the thing that stops us. It stops us from wanting to integrate who we are with how we live in the world. Because we gotta do it. We gotta speak and we gotta act in this way. And we are reluctant and we're scared because we don't want to hurt people and we don't want to disappoint people and we don't want to get criticized or gossiped about. We don't want to be rejected. We just want to belong. Human beings will go a long way to belong and be loved. But if we don't act and speak from this place, then there's a strong likelihood we're going to suffer. I had my experience with suffering. I had all the warning signs. Arguably, I had stop signs and metal barricades with my girlfriends waving red flags. I crashed through all of them, and I married him anyway. Come on, like I was 33, I wanted babies, he had really good teeth, and these are not reasons to marry people. These are not reasons. Because the truth about this is that I spent the next 7 years pretending to be in a happy marriage in my little brown bungalow nestled in the woods. And behind the doors of my little brown bungalow, I was dealing with a lot of pain and intolerable things that I didn't want to tell anybody about. So I'd wake up in the morning and I'd cry into my cereal, and then I'd put on my happy face and I'd go out in the world as though everything was fine. And that level of misalignment that I was living rendered me a pretty unhappy, bitter, unwell person. And what happened one morning was that I woke up, and the time between opening my eyes and getting that pit in my stomach, that dread, was about 2 seconds. And I think what really happened that morning was that I woke up in every way. I had a crisis of awareness. And my preference really is, folks, that you have that crisis of awareness now, not in 2 decades. It's much easier now. I didn't recognize myself. Who I was being and how I was acting in the world was so very, very far away from who I knew I was. And for years and years, on my wall of my bedroom, I had a photograph with a quotation on it that I never really saw until that morning. For some reason, I read it, and it was Annie Dillard's quote. And Annie Dillard says, "How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives." I was not liking my day, and I did not want my life to look like this. So I started this process of changing. And the way I did that was the same way I do it with my clients, and that is I ask the question. Ask yourself this. When are you most at home? What are you doing when you feel timeless and peaceful and in flow, lit up inside? For me, it was hanging laundry, being with children, and having people around my table. It doesn't matter what it is. Not at all. What matters are the qualities that go with it. So for me, hanging laundry was things like fresh air and frugality and wind and sunshine and being alone out on my little deck. Those are qualities that go with it. Having people, or playing with kids, being with children was about teaching and silliness and laughter. And having people around my table was about local food, community, meaningful conversations, eye contact. This was my querencia. I added up all of these things, and I made a list of all the things that mattered, that I desired, and that I believed in, and who I was. That was my querencia then. And I gotta say, folks, that who we are, besides a few core things, we change. And I'm not the same person I was 10 years ago and 5 years ago. And Querencia can change who we are. Last week, sometimes even in the run of a day, we're fluid. What isn't fluid, what's very static, is our relationship to that place, listening and trusting that place. The other thing that happened during this time for me was that I learned how to speak. This is kind of what I used to do. This is what we think, and this is what we say. We say, sure, I'd love to take care of your cat. It's messy in that headspace. You know, all these things we're thinking about people, it's messy and noisy and critical. This is the alternative. No, actually I can't. It's swift, it's clean, it's unjustified, right? Speaking from our querencetic place means that we take our raw data, like the critical, unevolved, mean things like I hate you and your cat, and you're wrecking my weekend, and we pass it through some filters. Well, maybe some compassion, respect, and empathy. And what comes out of our mouth is really about ourselves, and it's just clean and respectful. We say what we mean, but we're not mean when we say it. And it's like raw data meets grace. I'd love to tell you that once I started to speak from my querencetic place and live this way, that everything was apple pie and ice cream and there was like little fairy dust floating down over my life. But folks, change and transformation in this way, although sustainable and wonderful in the long run, it's difficult. And it takes time and it takes courage. And it brings us to some sharp edges in our lives, loss and grief. And the other thing is that things can be exposed in your life that you don't want to see and other people don't want to see. I know for me that lots of my friends ran for the hills covering their ears when I started telling them my truth. Because despite the fact that this does create happiness and sustainable wellness, there's a very real possibility that people are going to be disappointed, they're going to be angry and shocked and incredulous. How dare you live your life according to your own values and beliefs? What about me? How dare you be happy? How dare you be happy? How dare you? Disappointing others is short-lived. Disappointing ourselves is long-lived. And this is not a promotion for narcissism and hedonism, self-centeredness. It's really an invitation for you to be more centered in yourself. It's an invitation for peace. Get rid of all the noise of blaming, complaining, and gossiping. Be peaceful in yourself, in your relationships, in your family, in your community. Every single day, we are provided opportunities to notice misalignments in our lives that are small and big and work for that change. What could you be doing right now to live just a little closer to your querencia? Now check to see if you're holding your breath. Thanks very much.